Michael Jordan's unexpected encounter. It was a late night at Michael Jordan's private office, a space filled with the echoes of countless hours spent navigating the complex world of sports, business, and innovation. The world knew him as the greatest basketball player to ever step on a court, a man whose legacy had transcended sports, inspiring millions. Michael had retired from the game long ago, but his drive for excellence had never waned. Now, as a businessman, he had poured his soul into creating the next evolution in sports gear. Revolutionary basketball shoes that would give athletes an edge in performance, comfort, and style. He and his team had spent years perfecting this project, and the final product was set to be launched in just a few weeks. The stakes were high, and Michael could feel the weight of every decision pressing on his shoulders. The office was still, save for the hum of the city outside. Michael had just wrapped up a meeting discussing the shoe's final specifications. His engineers had assured him that the product was perfect, but something lingered in the back of his mind, a feeling he couldn't quite shake. There was always room for improvement, always that nagging voice that told him to keep pushing, to keep questioning, but it wasn't until the clock hit 11:45 p.m. and an unexpected knock echoed through the room that everything would change. Standing at the door wasn't another executive nor a colleague, it was a child. A 10-year-old girl, small but undeniably determined. Leah Carson. She stood in the doorway, her dark ponytail bouncing as she spoke with a confidence that belied her age. Her appearance was a stark contrast to the usual crowd Michael dealt with. She wasn't dressed in the corporate attire or the polished look of an industry professional. No, she wore simple clothes, carrying a tablet that seemed out of place in her hands. But it wasn't the tablet or her clothes that struck Michael. It was the intensity in her eyes. This wasn't just any child. There was something extraordinary about her, something that made him pause and take her seriously. "Mr. Jordan, I need to speak with you," she said, her voice clear and assertive. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. A child demanding attention at midnight? Michael's first instinct was to brush it off. He was already on edge from the day's meeting and the growing pressure of the upcoming launch, yet something about her presence made him lower his guard. "How did you get past security?" Michael asked, his mind racing with the possibilities. Was this some kind of stunt? A prank? But the sincerity in her gaze told a different story. She wasn't there to waste his time. Leah looked unbothered. "They were too busy talking about your endorsement deal. I walked right in." "You don't have time to waste, Mr. Jordan." Michael's irritation faded, replaced by curiosity. "What's this about?" he asked, already anticipating something strange. "I know your new project," she said, with a piercing look that made Michael's chest tighten. "And I know it's going to fail if you don't fix it." Michael frowned, still unsure of what was happening. This wasn't the type of conversation he had expected to be having at midnight. A 10-year-old girl seemingly out of nowhere claiming that the product he and his team had been working on for months, something they had poured everything into, was flawed. It sounded absurd. "What project?" Michael asked, trying to make sense of the situation. Without missing a beat, Leah set her tablet down on his desk and pulled up a design. It was a schematic for the basketball shoe he had been working on. Michael's eyes narrowed as he examined the document. What was a child doing with a design this advanced? What was even more shocking was the detail. Leah pointed to a specific part of the schematic, explaining the flaw in the shoe's pressure-sensitive cushioning system, which, in certain high-impact scenarios, would collapse too quickly. Michael's engineers hadn't noticed this. No one had. As the realization set in, Michael's world seemed to slow. A wave of disbelief crashed over him. How could this girl with no formal training identify a flaw in a multi-million-dollar project? His mind raced. He had spent years perfecting his business strategies, carefully assembling teams of top-tier engineers, and yet here was this child, without any corporate experience, no engineering degree, showing him exactly what was wrong. Leah wasn't intimidated. She didn't back down. She didn't shy away from the gravity of the moment. She simply presented the facts. The flaw was clear, the solution in her hands. And what was even more astonishing was that she didn't hesitate. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't worried about being dismissed. She was simply speaking the truth. Michael Jordan was known for his unshakable confidence on the court. He thrived under pressure, never doubting his ability to rise above challenges. But now, as he stood before this young girl, he felt something he had never felt before. For the first time in his life, he felt out of his depth. Here was a child who had just shown him the flaw in his project, something that no one else had noticed. She had done what his best engineers had failed to do, and she wasn't even trying to prove anything. She was just telling him what needed to be fixed. In that moment, Michael Jordan, the man who had dominated every field he had ever entered, found himself humbled by a 10-year-old girl. It was a humbling, surreal experience, one that would change his perspective forever. As he stood there, staring at the tablet and listening to Leah's calm explanation, he realized that this child wasn't just talented, she was extraordinary. And this encounter wasn't just about a design flaw, it was about the limitless potential of the human mind, of what can happen when someone dares to break the mold, to think beyond what others deem possible. This was a turning point not just for Michael, but for the world of innovation itself. A young girl had just proven that brilliance could come from anywhere, even from the most unexpected of places. Leah's expertise and problem identification. As the meeting continued in the quiet hum of Michael Jordan's office, the world outside seemed to blur. Leah Carson, the 10-year-old prodigy, had just presented an unexpected revelation that had left Michael and his team in stunned silence. The gravity of what she was saying began to sink in as Michael studied the tablet she had placed on his desk. The intricate design that spoke volumes of her capability. Her voice, calm and assured, cut through the tension in the room as she continued to point out the flaw in the basketball shoe's design. A flaw that no one, not even the most seasoned engineers in the room, had detected. "What you have here," Leah explained, her voice clear and precise, "is a critical error in the pressure-sensitive cushioning system. In your tests, you've accounted for the basic level of impact, but you haven't considered the long-term wear and tear under real-world conditions. The cushioning collapses too soon under repetitive force. When a player jumps, lands, and runs again, the shoe will lose its integrity. This will compromise performance, and more importantly, it could cause injury." She paused to let the weight of her words settle in the room. Michael's eyes widened as he realized the magnitude of what Leah had just explained. He had spent years developing this new shoe with his team, pouring all their collective expertise into making it perfect, yet here was a young girl, barely out of elementary school, diagnosing a flaw they had missed. How was it possible? Leah wasn't simply stating an opinion. She was presenting a solution, backed by an understanding that far exceeded her years. With a confident, deliberate motion, she tapped the screen of the tablet, pulling up a more detailed schematic of the shoe's interior mechanism. The layout was flawless, almost too perfect. She pointed to a series of calculations, each one showing a cascading series of errors that led to the malfunction. "It's all here," Leah continued, her fingers tracing the paths of energy distribution in the shoe's design. "When the shoe sensors attempt to compensate for the impact, they overcorrect. This causes the secondary system to work in conflict with the primary cushioning system. Essentially, the whole design is built on a faulty premise." Michael's heart skipped a beat. Not only had she identified the issue, but she had also pinpointed the specific reason why it would fail in real-world conditions. He had studied design principles for years, worked with some of the best minds in engineering and technology, and yet a child had uncovered what he and his experts had missed. The room grew heavy with realization. Michael turned to his lead engineer, Greg, who was standing silently by the door, his face pale. Greg's voice was barely above a whisper. "She's right, Michael. We've been running simulations, but this specific scenario wasn't accounted for. The secondary systems weren't tested for this exact type of impact." Michael could feel his pulse quicken as the weight of the situation set in. How had this young girl, who had no formal training or access to the specialized tools his team had, managed to unravel the very flaw they had all overlooked? Leah's response was as simple as it was profound. "I used the information that's publicly available," she said. "I read through your patents, your design blueprints. I also studied how your technology is similar to the systems used in your other ventures, like Tesla. I worked backward from what I could access, applying the engineering principles I've learned. Your team didn't see the feedback loop because they focused on theoretical performance, not on real-world applications. The way Leah explained it wasn't just impressive, it was humbling. She wasn't just a child reading books, she was a meticulous, self-taught expert in her own right. Her understanding of material science, systems engineering, and design was remarkable. Her ability to dissect complex concepts and then communicate them clearly and concisely was nothing short of extraordinary. For Michael, who had spent a lifetime perfecting his craft, whether on the basketball court or in the boardroom, this was a moment of true revelation. He had always been driven by the pursuit of excellence, the constant need to push the limits of what was possible. But here, in front of him, was proof that brilliance could come from unexpected places. The idea that a 10-year-old child could not only understand the intricacies of advanced design, but also correct a flaw in a multi-million-dollar project was something he hadn't even imagined. For a moment, Michael felt a sense of awe. Here was a child who had figured out what his most trusted engineers had missed, and more than that, she had the confidence and determination to walk into his office in the dead of night, bypassing security, to ensure that the project didn't fail. She had found the flaw not because she was trying to prove something, but because she simply wanted to help. Leah wasn't looking for recognition or fame. She wasn't trying to become a viral sensation or secure her place in history. She was simply solving a problem. And in doing so, she had exposed something much bigger than the shoe's design flaw, the limitless potential that existed within her. Michael was struck by the sheer honesty of her mission. She wasn't trying to show off her knowledge or impress anyone. She was trying to help. And that, Michael realized, was what made her so extraordinary. She wasn't just smart. She was driven by a genuine desire to make things better. This wasn't just about fixing a shoe. It was about doing the right thing, no matter how daunting the task seemed. As Michael looked at her, he knew this was more than a simple meeting. This moment was a catalyst, not just for the project, but for his entire perspective on innovation and learning. This young girl had proven to him that true brilliance wasn't always about age or experience. It was about curiosity, determination, and the courage to act when something was wrong. This was just the beginning of a journey that would change not only Michael's future, but also the future of many others. Young minds who, like Leah, saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. And that, he realized, was the most powerful force of all. Leah's background and self-taught genius. As Michael Jordan sat back in his chair, still reeling from the profound impact of Leah Carson's revelation, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this encounter than just a simple case of a young prodigy pointing out an engineering flaw. He had been around exceptional talent all his life, from teammates who displayed unmatched athleticism to business partners who redefined the boundaries of success. But Leah was different. There was something uniquely compelling about her, a depth and maturity that seemed far beyond her years. Curiosity gnawed at Michael as he watched Leah, the young girl who had just altered the course of his project with a single observation. He had to understand her. Who was she really? How could a child this young possess the kind of intellectual rigor that could rival the greatest minds in his company? "Leah, where did all this come from?" Michael finally asked, breaking the silence that had settled over the room. His tone was both gentle and inquisitive. He needed to know more. About her journey, about the mind that had led her here, to this moment. Leah's gaze softened as she paused, a flicker of something vulnerable passing through her eyes. She had been so sure of herself in the meeting, so confident in her explanations. But now, as she looked at Michael, there was a hint of a child beneath the intellect. A child who had seen things far too early in life. "My mom and dad were both engineers," Leah said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "They taught me everything I know." Her words carried an unspoken weight. Michael could feel it in the way she said it, like the very mention of her parents caused an ache in her heart, a loss that would never fully heal. Leah's parents had been brilliant scientists, pioneers in their fields, but tragedy had struck when she was just 4 years old. They had died in a laboratory explosion, an accident that left Leah and her grandmother, May Carson, to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. It was a loss that shaped her into the person she had become, a child who, didn't just learn because she was taught, but because she had to. Michael's heart ached as he listened. He had seen his fair share of adversity, of challenges that had tested him to the core. But hearing Leah's story, how she had lost both of her parents and was left to fend for herself, guided only by the lessons they had instilled in her, made him realize that her brilliance was not just the result of a natural gift. It was born of necessity. "My grandma took care of me after they died," Leah continued, her voice growing steadier. "She wasn't an engineer, she worked odd jobs to keep the bills paid, but she always told me to keep learning. Books became my escape. I'd read everything I could get my hands on. When I didn't understand something, I'd find a way to figure it out. Sometimes it was hard, sometimes I'd have to teach myself from scratch. But I didn't mind, it kept me going." Leah's words struck Michael in a way he hadn't expected. It wasn't just the tragedy of her past that moved him, but the strength she had shown in the face of it. While most children her age were playing with toys, making friends, and worrying about schoolyard drama, Leah had been grappling with complex scientific principles, teaching herself concepts that most adults couldn't comprehend. And she hadn't done it out of a sense of obligation or ambition. She had done it because there was no other choice. "Your grandmother must be incredibly proud of you," Michael said softly, his mind racing with thoughts of his own children. He couldn't imagine the weight Leah must have carried, nor the strength required to navigate the world without the support of her parents. Leah gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "She is, but she worries about me too. She always tells me that I should be a kid, that I shouldn't rush into things too quickly, but learning has always felt like the only way forward." Michael looked at her and saw not just a child, but a survivor. She had lived through something that would break most people, losing both parents at such a young age, and yet she had emerged with an intellect that was nothing short of extraordinary. Her self-taught genius was not just the result of a natural gift, it was a product of years of resilience, of pushing through hardship, of never giving up. In many ways, Leah's story reminded Michael of his own journey. He had come from humble beginnings, facing obstacles at every turn, but it was his unrelenting drive that had propelled him to greatness. Leah had the same drive, the same determination, but hers was shaped by an entirely different set of circumstances. She wasn't just trying to be the best, she was trying to make sense of a world that had dealt her an unimaginable blow, and in the process, she had become something far greater than anyone had expected. Michael paused, taking in everything Leah had shared with him. He had heard many stories of triumph and success, but there was something uniquely inspiring about Leah's resilience. She wasn't just a child prodigy, she was a force of nature, a young woman who had learned to navigate the complexities of life through sheer willpower and intellect. "I can see now," Michael said slowly, his voice filled with respect, "that you didn't just learn from books, you learned from life, and that makes you more extraordinary than anyone I've ever met." Leah looked up at him, her dark eyes steady. "I didn't choose this, Mr. Jordan, but I can't stop now. I want to make something of it. I want to use what I've learned to help people, to make things better. My parents would have wanted that." Michael nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that Leah's brilliance wasn't just about her intellect. It was about her heart. She wasn't driven by ego or fame. She was driven by something far more powerful, the desire to make a difference, to create something that would help others and change the world. Leah Carson was not just a genius. She was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the boundless potential that lies within us all, no matter our age or the circumstances we face. And Michael knew, in that moment, that he had just encountered a young mind who would change the world in ways he couldn't even begin to imagine. The emotional moment of realization. As the night deepened and the tension in the room gradually subsided, Michael Jordan found himself standing in a quiet corner of his office, lost in thought. The vibrant, ever-moving world of sports and business that he had meticulously crafted over decades suddenly felt distant and almost irrelevant. He had spent years becoming the best, on the court, in the boardroom, and as an entrepreneur. His confidence had been built on countless challenges met and conquered, pushing boundaries and rewriting the rulebook. But tonight, standing before him, was a young girl whose intellect and insight had shaken the very foundation of everything he thought he knew. Leah Carson wasn't just another brilliant mind. She wasn't simply a child prodigy who could rattle off facts or theories. No, Leah had done something much more profound. She had shown Michael Jordan that sometimes the world's greatest solutions come from the most unexpected places. She had proven to him that no matter how high you climb, there is always room to learn, to be humbled, and to be amazed. Michael's mind was spinning. He couldn't stop thinking about the astonishing clarity with which Leah had identified the flaw in his shoe design. It wasn't just her ability to pinpoint the problem, it was how she had done it. She hadn't just relied on facts and figures. She had been able to make connections that others couldn't, weaving together knowledge from different disciplines, pulling from her own life experiences to find a solution, and she did it without asking for credit or attention. She simply wanted to solve the problem. He looked back at Leah, who was still sitting at the desk, her eyes wide with focus as she explained her solution to the engineers. She wasn't seeking praise, she wasn't waiting for accolades. There was no ego in her actions, only a pure, raw desire to make something better. Michael couldn't help but be moved by her humility, her maturity, and her determination. How many adults would have been willing to stand up to a giant like him? How many would have had the courage to break into a facility, bypass security, and directly confront a man of his stature with a solution to his problem? And yet, Leah had done all of that, driven not by ambition, but by a deep sense of responsibility. As the engineers scrambled to implement her ideas, Michael found himself reflecting on the path he had taken in life. For so long, he had been the one leading the charge, the one pushing others forward. He had always believed in the power of his own vision, the strength of his own abilities. But now, standing on the other side of this moment, he felt a sense of humility that he hadn't experienced in years. It was as if Leah had shown him that, no matter how much you think you know, there is always more to learn, always more to discover. In that moment, Michael realized that his greatest strength had always been his ability to learn from others, to grow and to adapt. He had done it on the basketball court, where every loss was a lesson and every win a stepping stone to something greater. And now, standing in his office, he realized that the same lesson applied to everything else in his life. His journey had never been about simply being the best. It had been about constantly evolving, constantly seeking to improve. And tonight, Leah had taught him one of the most important lessons of all, that even the most unexpected people can offer the solutions we need to move forward. As the room filled with the hum of activity and engineers busied themselves with implementing Leah's recommendations, Michael stood still, staring out the window. The lights of the city flickered in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for his own accomplishments, but for the opportunity to learn from someone who had a perspective he could never have imagined. He glanced back at Leah, who was still engrossed in explaining her ideas to the team. She was so young, yet so wise beyond her years. Her ability to absorb knowledge, her passion for learning, and her commitment to solving problems were traits that many adults struggled to embody. But Leah had it all: an innate curiosity, a willingness to take risks, and an unwavering commitment to doing the right thing, even when it seemed impossible. For Michael, the realization hit him hard. This encounter wasn't just about a business deal or a product design. It was a moment of profound personal growth. It was a reminder that no matter how high we rise, there is always room for humility, always room for reflection. There is always room for the unexpected to shake our world and offer us a new perspective. And sometimes, that perspective comes from the most unlikely places. As Leah finished her explanation and the engineers began to act on her advice, Michael couldn't help but smile to himself. He had spent his entire life striving for excellence, but in that moment, he understood that excellence wasn't just about being the best. It was about having the courage to learn, to grow, and to accept that sometimes the answers we need are already right in front of us. And sometimes they come from the most unexpected sources. Leah Carson, with her quiet wisdom and self-taught genius, had just taught Michael Jordan one of the most valuable lessons of his life: that greatness is not just about what we achieve on our own, but about how we remain open to the brilliance of others, especially those who see the world through a different lens. In this moment, Michael realized that the world was much bigger than him, and that the future wasn't just for the elite or the privileged. It was for anyone with the vision, the heart, and the will to make a difference. no matter their age or their circumstances. And Michael knew deep in his soul that he had just been part of something extraordinary, something that would change not only his future, but the future of countless others. Michael offers Leah a mentorship opportunity. The stillness in Michael Jordan's office was punctuated only by the quiet hum of the city outside, a soft contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. His gaze kept returning to Leah Carson, the young girl who had just shaken the very foundation of everything he had worked so hard to build. As the team scrambled to implement her suggestions, Michael stood by, quietly reflecting on the profound impact this night had already had on him. Leah's intelligence was beyond remarkable. It was a gift, a force of nature that seemed to defy the very notion of age. Michael had built a career on being the best, but he had also learned over the years the importance of recognizing talent in others. Throughout his basketball career, he had always trusted the skills of his teammates, the wisdom of his coaches, and the guidance of those around him. Yet here in his office, facing a young girl, he realized the true value of mentorship, of nurturing and developing raw, untapped potential. He was staring at someone whose brilliance, if honed and guided properly, could change the course of industries and lives. Leah had shown him more than just a design flaw in a basketball shoe. She had shown him the power of curiosity, of self-motivation, of a relentless pursuit of knowledge. What struck him the most was how, despite the tragedies she had faced, Leah's drive had never faltered. She didn't just want to understand the world, she wanted to shape it, fix its problems, and make it better. Michael saw something in her that he recognized, the same fire that had driven him to greatness, the same hunger for excellence that had defined every moment of his career. As the room filled with the noise of engineers implementing Leah's fixes, Michael felt a sense of urgency. This wasn't just about fixing a product, it was about giving Leah an opportunity that could change the trajectory of her life, an opportunity that could allow her to channel her extraordinary talents into something that would benefit not just her, but the world at large. He approached Leah slowly, the gravity of the moment pressing heavily on his chest. He wasn't sure what exactly to say, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let this moment slip away without offering her the kind of support that could shape her future. He had always believed that talent needed the right environment to thrive, that with the right guidance there were no limits to what someone could achieve, and Leah had shown him that she was more than ready for that kind of opportunity. "Leah," Michael began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've been around some of the brightest minds in the world, engineers, athletes, business leaders, but I've never met anyone quite like you." His words hung in the air, sincere and raw. He could see the flicker of surprise in her eyes, as if she hadn't expected this recognition, but there was more to come. "I think you have something special, something rare," Michael continued. "You've already taught me more in the last few hours than I've learned in years, and I think you're just getting started." Leah's expression softened, but she remained calm. She didn't ask for accolades or praise, she was simply listening. Michael took a deep breath, knowing that what he said next could change the course of her life. "I want to offer you something," Michael said, his voice growing more certain with each word. "I want to offer you a mentorship, a chance to work with me and my teams at Nike, at my companies, where you can have access to some of the brightest minds and most innovative technologies in the world. You'll be able to explore new ideas, develop solutions, and have the resources to turn your vision into reality. But it's not just about access, it's about guidance. It's about having the right people to help you grow." Leah's eyes widened, but she didn't immediately respond. Michael understood her hesitation. This wasn't just an ordinary offer. This was a leap into a world she had only ever dreamed of, a world that seemed so far out of reach for someone like her. "But there's one thing I need from you," Michael added, sensing that Leah was still processing. "This isn't just about you. If you accept this, you'll be part of something bigger than yourself. I want you to share what you learn, not just with me, but with others. I want you to help other kids like you, those who have the same potential but don't have the same opportunities. There are too many kids out there who don't have access to the resources, the mentorship, the encouragement that they need to succeed. You can change that, Leah." The room fell silent as Michael's words sank in. Leah was silent for a moment, her brow furrowing as she processed the weight of his offer. Finally she spoke, her voice small but steady. "I've always wanted to do something important," Leah said quietly. "I want to fix things, to make the world better, but I never thought anyone would actually give me a chance." Michael smiled, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and admiration. "That's because people don't always see what's in front of them. But I see you, Leah. I see the power you have to change things. And I want to help you do that." Leah's eyes glistened with something between hope and disbelief. She had spent her life learning from books, from the memories of her parents, from the quiet wisdom of her grandmother. But now she was being offered something that she had never expected, a chance to learn from the greatest minds in the world, a chance to see her ideas and dreams take flight. "I'll do it," Leah said, her voice stronger now. "I'll take the challenge. And I'll do everything I can to help other kids like me." Michael nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Good. We'll make sure you have everything you need to succeed. But remember, this isn't just about what you can accomplish on your own. It's about making a difference in the lives of others, too." As Leah shook his hand, Michael felt a deep sense of fulfillment that he had never experienced before. He had always been a man who sought excellence, but now he realized that true excellence wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about giving others the opportunity to rise and shine as well. And in that moment, Michael knew that Leah Carson wasn't just a brilliant child, she was a catalyst for change, and with the right guidance, she could change the world. This wasn't the beginning of just a mentorship. It was the beginning of something far more profound. It was the start of a legacy that would inspire future generations to believe in the power of knowledge, the importance of mentorship, and the limitless potential of the human spirit. And Michael Jordan, the man who had built an empire, had just become a part of it. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.